7 in the morning. The sun barely grazes the tops of the 7 hills, illuminating a landscape that history has romanticized to the point of nausea. Forget the white marble columns. Forget the immaculate togas and the philosophers debating in the forum. That is a lie. The Rome of the year 753, before Christ, is not a civilization. It is an open wound in the earth. It is a glorified refugee camp, a den of thieves, murderers and exiles clinging to a muddy hill surrounded by infected swamps. Romulus, the man who killed his own brother for crossing a line in the dirt, is not a noble king. He is a desperate gang leader, and his great city has a fatal problem. A mathematical problem that guarantees its extinction before its legend even begins. They have walls, they have swords, they have men, thousands of men, but they have no future. Do you know why? Because there are no women. Thousands of men hardened by the sun, with scars on their skin and hunger in their eyes, but not a single wife, not a single mother to raise the next generation of Romans. Rome is a sterile city, a city of dead men walking, condemned to disappear when the last of them falls from old age or pierced by a sword. What is the use of founding the greatest empire in history if there are no sons to inherit it? The desperation of Romulus is palpable. He sends ambassadors to the neighboring peoples, to the Canaanenses, to the Crustuminians, and especially to the Sabines, an ancient, rich and proud people who live in the nearby hills. Romulus asks for the right of connubium, the right to marry their daughters. And what response does he receive? Mockery, absolute contempt. Why do you not open your asylum also to criminal women? They ask the Sabines with a cruel smile. That would be a suitable match for your rabble. The insult hits Romulus like a slap with an iron glove. But Romulus is not a man who accepts no for an answer. If diplomacy fails, deception remains. If they will not give him a future, he will steal it. Here is where the story stops being political and becomes a crime on a grand scale. Romulus announces a festival, the games in honor of Neptune Equestrian. He promises a spectacle they've never seen before. Horse races, wine, banquets. He invites all the neighbors and the neighbors, curious to see what this band of outlaws has built. Come in droves. The Canaanenses come, the Antimnates, the Crustuminians, and, of course, the Sabines come. They come with their entire families. They bring their wives, and where today would be the ruins of the Forum is full of music and laughter. The wine flows. The guard of the Sabines is down. They have come to have fun, not to fight. They watch the races, they bet, they eat. But the Romans do not watch the horses. The Romans watch the women. Every man in Rome has a precise instruction, an order that has circulated in whispers through the muddy alleys. They wait for a signal. Romulus stands up on his wooden throne. The noise of the crowd is deafening. He adjusts his cloak and then, with a theatrical and calculated movement, he rises and folds his purple cape. It is the trigger. Hell breaks loose in the blink of an eye. Suddenly, the Romans stop being hosts and become predators. They draw hidden daggers, not to kill, but to threaten. They throw themselves on the crowd. They do not seek gold. They do not seek jewels. They seek flesh. Each Roman grabs a Sabine woman, lifts her up, drags her screaming toward the inside of the city walls. The panic is absolute. The tables flop. The wine mixes with the dust. The Sabine fathers try to defend their daughters, but they are unarmed, drunk and outnumbered. They are pushed out of the city, forced to flee while they hear the screams of their daughters fading behind the doors that slam shut. Treason, they shout to the sky, invoking the gods of hospitality to witness this sacrilege. Romulus has just committed the greatest diplomatic crime of antiquity. He has kidnapped the future of an entire nation to feed his own. Inside the walls, the scene is one of terror and confusion. But Romulus, with that sociopathic coldness of the great leaders, walks among the terrified women. He tells them not to fear. He tells them that now they are citizens of Rome, that they will be respected wives, not slaves, that their fathers were arrogant in denying them marriage, and that this is their fault. It is a masterful manipulation. But fear is not erased with speeches. Outside, silence falls over the valley. But it is not a silence of peace. It is the silence of a storm that is charging with electricity. The neighboring peoples are furious. The Canaanenses, impatient. Attack first and alone, they are crushed by Romulus, who kills their king with his own hands and offers their weapons to Jupiter. Then the Antemnates and the Christuminians fall. Rome seems invincible, but the real enemy is missing. The big fish is missing. The Sabines do not attack. Titus Tatius. The king of the Sabines is not an impulsive man. He is a strategist. He is a man who knows that revenge is a dish served cold. While Rome celebrates its small victories, Titus Tatius observes, gathers his army, sharpens his swords, feeds the hatred in the hearts of his men, a pure and distilled hatred toward the thieves of women. Time passes. The seasons change, and finally, when Romulus believes the danger has passed, the horizon darkens. It is not a raid. It is not a group of looters. It is an army of extermination. The Sabines have arrived at the foot of the Capitoline Hill, and this time they do not come to negotiate. They come to erase Rome from the face of the earth. They come to recover their daughters and to kill every man who dared to lay a hand on them. The war has arrived at the gates of Romulus. But what is about to happen in the swamp under the hills will not be a heroic battle of bards and poets. It will be a dirty, treacherous, and desperate slaughter. Because for the Romans, defeat does not mean only losing a battle. It means total extinction. And for the Sabines, victory is the only way to wash away the stain of their honor. The swords are drawn, the shields are raised, the air smells of rain and old blood. The stage is set for disaster. Rome has an advantage, and it is a massive advantage. The Capitoline Hill is a natural fortress, a steep rock that rises above the swamps like a defiant fist. Up there, behind the wooden and stone palisades, is the Roman garrison. They have the height, they have the position. Any army that tries to climb that slope will be annihilated by a rain of arrows and rocks before reaching halfway. Titus Tatius, the Sabine king, looks up and he knows it. He is not a stupid general who wastes lives on suicidal assaults. He sees the impregnable walls and understands that steel will not open those gates. But Tatius knows human nature. He knows that every wall has a crack, and that crack is rarely made of stone. Almost always of flesh and bone. The crack has a name, Tarpeia. She is the daughter of Spurius Tarpeius, the commander in charge of the defense of the citadel. While the men sharpen their spears and pray to Mars, Tarpeia looks down, but she does not look at the danger. She looks at the shine from the walls, her eyes fixed on the arms of the Sabine warriors who patrol below. The Sabines are rich, ostentatiously rich. They wear heavy, solid gold bracelets on their left arms, rings with precious stones that flash under the midday sun like promises of a better life. For a young woman living in a city of mud and desperate men, that gold is hypnotic. It is an escape. Tatius sees her gaze. The predator has found the prey. The meeting occurs under the excuse of a ritual when Tarpeia goes down to fetch water for the sacred sacrifices outside the walls. It is a moment of unbearable tension. A single scream, a single alarm, and the war would begin right there. But there are no screams, only whispers. The Sabine king approaches. He does not offer threats. He offers trade. What do you want in exchange for opening the gates of the fortress? To us, he asks. His voice is soft, but his eyes are cold as winter ice. Tarpeia swallows hard. Her heart beats against her ribs. Not for patriotism, but for greed. She points with a trembling finger at the arms of the Sabine soldiers loaded with jewels. Give me what you wear on your left arms, she whispers, and the citadel is yours tonight. Titus Tatius smiles. It is a smile that should have frozen the blood of the girl. He accepts the deal. You will have everything we carry on our left arms. You have my word as king. Night falls over Rome. A thick and humid darkness covers the swampy valley. The silence is absolute, broken only by the croaking of frogs in the mudflat, which will soon be a tomb. Up on the Capitoline, the Roman sentinels watch the darkness, confident in their impregnability. They do not know that the enemy is already inside. The gate of the citadel opens with a groan of wood that sounds like a bone breaking. Tarpeia is there waiting in the shadows with her breath short. She sees the silhouettes of the Sabine warriors enter. Huge, silent, lethal. Hundreds of them slip inside the defensive perimeter. The betrayal is consummated. Rome has lost its shield before launching the first blow. When the Sabine army is inside, Tarpeia stands in front of King Tedius. She extends her hands, waiting for the rain of gold. The bracelets, the rings. She expects to be the richest woman in Italy. Fulfill your promise, she demands. Give me what you carry on your left arm. Tatius looks at her with infinite contempt. Traitors are useful tools, but no one loves the tool that sells itself. The Sabine king raises his left arm, but he does not remove the gold bracelet. Instead, he unhooks his heavy combat shield, a massive block of wood and bronze that he also carries on his left arm. This is what we carry. Take your reward. And with brutal force, he smashes the shield against the traitor. It is the first sign of violence. Tarpeia falls under the weight, screaming, but her scream is instantly drowned. The next soldier throws his shield on her, and the next and the next. It is not a quick execution. It is a crushing. Tarpeia dies buried, not under the gold she coveted, but under tons of bronze and hatred. Her body remains there, a red stain under a mountain of shields, giving its name forever to the Tarpeian rock, the place from which Rome will throw its traitors for the rest of eternity. A lesson written in blood. Betrayal is paid with death. The noise wakes the Romans, but it is too late. Chaos erupts on the top of the Capitoline. The Sabines, already inside the walls, massacre the surprised garrison. The Romans flee, fall, die in their beds or trying to reach their weapons. In a matter of 1 hour, the strongest position of Rome has fallen. The Sabine banner waves over the citadel. At dawn, the strategic situation has completely reversed. It is a military catastrophe. Romulus is down in the swampy valley, in the lower city, looking up with helplessness. Now it is the Sabines who have the height. Now it is the Sabines who have the advantage. And the Romans, those proud wolves, are trapped at the bottom of the bowl with the swamp at their backs and a rain of death waiting for them if they try to climb. Roman morale wavers. They have lost security. They have lost surprise. And they have lost their protective gods on top of the hill. The army of Tatius begins to descend slowly like a black iron tide that descends the slope. They are not in a hurry. They know they have Romulus cornered. The setting for the final battle will not be an open and fair plain. It will be the confined, humid and treacherous valley between the Palatine and Capitoline hills, a place where the ground is soft, where the mud sucks the boots, and where there is no space to maneuver. Romulus walks among his lines. He sees the fear in the eyes of his men who are criminals and murderers, yes, but who now face a disciplined, furious, and tactically superior army. They have taken the height from us, he tells them, his voice resounding over the clamor of the enemy weapons. Well, then we will have to climb to kill them. Let them come down to us. Let them come down to the mud to die. It is a boast, and he knows it, but it is all they have. The Roman formation closes, shields against shields, a wall of wood and leather that trembles slightly in front of them. The slope fills with Sabines. The air charges with static. The moment of maneuvers has ended. The moment of politics has ended. Now only the brutal physics of the clash remains. Two peoples, one future city, and in the middle, a hungry swamp waiting to swallow the losers. Medius Curtius, the champion of the Sabines, steps forward mounted on his horse. He is a giant, a warrior who seems carved from the same rock of the mountains. He shouts insults at the Romans, calling them kidnappers of women, cowards without honor. His challenge floats in the morning air. Hostilius, the Roman champion, steps forward to respond. The duel is served, and with it, the beginning of the annihilation. The valley is a trap. There is no other way to describe it. The ground under the boots of the armies is not firm earth. It is a treacherous mixture of wet clay, stagnant pools, and sharp reeds. It is a terrain that denies speed. that punishes movement and that promises to drown the fallen before they lose their lives from the wounds. In the center of this mudflat, the air tenses until it breaks. Hostilius throws himself forward. He is the incarnation of Roman fury, reckless, wild. A whirlwind of blows that seeks to break the Sabine defense by pure brute force. Metius Curtius, mounted on his warhorse, receives him with the coldness of steel. The clash is brutal. The sound of bronze against bronze echoes on the slopes of the hills like dry thunder. Hostilius fights like a demon, knowing that the eyes of his entire city are fixed on his back. He strikes, pushes, shouts. For a moment, it seems that Roman ferocity is going to break Sabine discipline. Hostilius advances step by step, gaining ground in the mud. But war does not reward only fury. It rewards precision. And Metius Curtius is precise. In an instant of overexertion, Hostilius leaves a flank open. It is an error of millimeters. Enough. The Sabine sword finds flesh. Hostilius, the champion, the pillar of Roman morale, staggers. The blood spurts hot and dark, mixing with the dirty water of the swamp. He falls to his knees, then falls face down in the mud. The silence that follows lasts barely a heartbeat, but it feels eternal. And then the panic, the fear is contagious, faster than any plague. Seeing their best man fall, the Roman line disintegrates. It is not an orderly retreat, it is a shameful rout. The men of Romulus, those wolves who believe themselves invincible, throw their shields, turn their backs on the enemy, run desperately toward the old Palatine gate, seeking the safety of their wooden walls. They push each other, trample the slowest. The survival instinct has erased honor. The Sabines smell the fear. Metius Curtius, euphoric, spurs his horse and leads the pursuit. To them, he shouts courteous, his voice full of triumphant contempt. We have defeated these perfidious hosts, these cowardly enemies. You know that stealing maidens is one thing, and fighting men is quite another. The words burn more than arrows. The Sabines advance like a scythe, cutting down the straggling Romans from behind. It is a hunt. The army of Romulus is about to be annihilated before reaching the safety of its hill. The massacre is imminent. The history of Rome was about to end here in an anonymous swamp, written as a footnote about a band of criminals who tried to be kings and died like rats. But geography has a macabre sense of humor. Metius Curtius, blinded by victory and adrenaline, pushes his horse too far, too fast. He ventures into the deepest part of the swamp. The ground gives way. Suddenly, the horse sinks to its belly. The animal neighs terrified, thrashing its legs, throwing black mud in all directions. The great Sabine champion, the invincible rider, is trapped fighting not against a Roman, but against the earth itself that tries to swallow him. The Sabines stop. The pursuit slows. They run to help their leader, throwing spears and ropes to pull him out of the deadly mud. That hole in the swamp will be known forever as the Lacus Curtius, an eternal reminder that arrogance precedes the fall. That brief instant of chaos in the Sabine ranks is all that fate grants to Romulus. The Roman king is being dragged by the tide of his own men who are fleeing. They hit his shoulders. They ignore his orders. He is losing control. He is losing his city. Romulus reaches the gates of the Palatine panting with the bitter taste of defeat in his mouth. He knows that if they cross those gates, everything will be over. The Sabines will burn the palisade and kill them all inside. Romulus stops. He turns around. He does not look at his men. He looks at the sky. It is a moment of absolute desperation. Romulus raises his spear toward the clouds, ignoring the chaos around him. He needs a miracle. Or rather, he needs his men to believe in a miracle. Jupiter, roars Romulus, his voice breaking the roar of battle. Father of the Gulsin of men, it was under your auspices that I laid the first foundations of this city on the Palatine. Now the citadel has been bought by crime and occupied by the enemy. They are here crossing the valley. The fleeing Romans begin to slow down. Something in the voice of their king pierces their panic. But you, father of the cause, continues Romulus with eyes bloodshot, stop the enemy right here. Remove the terror from the hearts of the Romans. Stop their shameful flight. I promise you here and now a temple to Jupiter Stator. Jupiter, the one who stops. As a monument for posterity that the city was saved by your help. The air changes. The psychology of the masses is something fragile and volatile. Romulus lowers his gaze from the sky and fixes it on his soldiers who crowd trembling at the gate. He is no longer the man who was fleeing. Now he is the king anointed by divinity. Romans, he shouts, no longer as a plea, but as a divine order. Jupiter Optimus Maximus orders you to stop and renew the fight. It is a lie. Or maybe it is faith. It does not matter. It works as if they had collided with an invisible wall. The Romans stop dead. The flight ceases. Silence falls over the disordered ranks. The men look at each other, seeing the shame in the faces of their comrades. They breathe deeply, clench their teeth, and then turn on their heels. They are no longer prey fleeing. They have remembered that they are wolves. Medius Curtius, freshly pulled from the mud, covered in filth but still defiant, sees the impossible. The human tide that was fleeing has turned around. And now that tide comes toward him. Romulus puts himself at the front. There is no complex tactic here. There is only a frontal charge driven by religious fanaticism and the desperation of having nowhere to go. The Romans charge downhill, crashing into the confused Sabines. The battle restarts in the center of the valley. But this time the ferocity is double. The clash is so violent that the mud turns red in a matter of seconds. It is a slaughter without quarter. Tooth for tooth, eye for eye. The Romans fight as if possessed, pushing the Sabines back step by step toward the Capitoline. The momentum has changed. But just when the violence reaches its boiling point, just when it seems that one of the two sides will have to exterminate the other to the last man for this to end, something unthinkable happens. A strange sound pierces the din of metal and the screams of agony. It is a sharp, tearing sound that does not belong to a battlefield. The warriors of both sides, with swords raised and shields broken, freeze. They look to the sides. They look toward the center of the conflict. What they see freezes their blood more than any enemy. They are not war horns. They are not drums. They are laments. From the gates of Rome, a human wave launches toward the center of the slaughter. They do not wear bronze armor. They do not wear leather shields. They wear torn tunics and loose hair flying in the wind like banners of mourning. They are the Sabine women. They are the victims, the kidnapped, the ones who started all this hell. They run barefoot over the mud-stained red, ignoring the mortal danger of the flying spears and the descending swords. They literally throw themselves between the combatants. It is an act of suicidal madness. They interpose themselves between the sharp blades and the flesh of the men, using their own bodies as living barriers. The battlefield, a second before a machine of noise and death, suffers a spasm. The warriors stop, frozen in postures of interrupted violence. A Roman stops his blow millimeters from the face of a Sabine because a woman has hung from his armed arm. A Sabine lowers his spear because his own daughter has knelt in front of his shield. The silence that falls over the valley is heavier than the roar of combat. Only as the push and the agitated breathing of hundreds of men and women are heard. Then Hercilia, with her face dirty with dust and tears, raises her voice. She does not speak like a prisoner. She speaks with the authority of someone who has the fate of two nations in her hands. She looks into the eyes of the Sabines, her fathers and brothers. She looks into the eyes of the Romans, her husbands. Stop. She shouts, and her voice breaks the air. If you are fighting for us, stop, because this war is... She turns toward the Sabines, toward King Titus Tatius. Fathers, if you kill these men, you turn us into widows. We are no longer foreign virgins. We are wives. We carry their children in our wombs. She turns toward the Romans, toward Romulus. Husbands, if you kill these men, you stain your hands with the blood of your fathers-in-law. You make your children grandchildren of murderers. The logic is crushing. It is brutal. The women expose the terrible truth of this war. It is no longer a conflict between strangers. The blood has mixed. If the Sabines win and recover their daughters,
Turn your
they will
anger
take away
against us.
broken women and fatherless orphans. If the Romans win, they will raise sons who will hate the murderers of their grandfathers. Turn your anger against us. The women clamor in unison, opening their arms in a cross. We are the cause of the war. We are the cause of the
Sleep
wounds and
now,
of the
little
deaths. Better to die than to live as
are
widows or
safe.
orphans because of both.
You-
Some of them lift the babies born in those months of captivity. They show them as sacred shields, small bundles of life in the middle of a field of death. The effect is devastating. The combat fury, that hot drug that drives men to kill, evaporates, replaced by a cold and deep shame. The leaders, Romulus and Tatius, look at each other through the sea of female heads. They see the horror of what they were about to do. They were about to commit mutual parricide on an industrial scale. The swords lower slowly, the shields touch the ground. A Sabine warrior, with eyes full of tears, recognizes his sister. He takes a step forward, not to attack, but to hug her. A Roman drops his dagger and takes the hand of his wife, who trembles uncontrollably. The hatred dissolves before the biological reality of the family. In that valley soaked in blood, the war does not end with a victory. It ends with an emotional collapse. Romulus takes a step forward. Titus Tatius does the same. They walk among the crying women, dodging the corpses of the fallen. They meet in the center. There are no handshakes yet, but there is a tacit understanding. The battle has ended. The slaughter is impossible now. The silence is broken, not with shouts of triumph, but with the sound of weapons being sheathed. It is the sound of survival. But now comes the hardest part. The blood dries, but the problem persists. Two kings, two peoples, one single city. How do you repair the irreparable? How do the kidnapper and the father of the victim coexist at the same table? What is about to happen will change the structure of power forever. Rome is going to stop being a tyranny of one man to become something much more complex. The silence that follows the intervention of the women is not peace. It is a ceasefire, fragile, sustained by threads of nerves about to break. In the center of the valley, where the Sabine blood has mixed irrevocably with the Roman mud, the strangest negotiation in ancient history takes place. There are no marble tables. There are no parchments. There are no scribes noting clauses. Only two warlords covered in dirt, breathing with difficulty, looking into each other's eyes over the heads of the women who have just saved their lives. Romulus and Titus Tatius, the wolf and the bull, both know the mathematical truth of the situation. Neither can annihilate the other without destroying their own future. If Romulus kills the fathers of his new wives, he will have a domestic rebellion in every bed in Rome. If Tatius kills the husbands of his daughters, he will condemn his grandchildren to orphanhood and his daughters to misery. The only way out is fusion, and so, in the middle of the mudflat, which will later be the glorious Roman Forum, the agreement is born. It is not a surrender. It is an amalgamation. The gates of Rome open wide, but this time not for a trap, but for a massive move. The Sabines do not go home. They stay. Imagine the logistical and cultural impact. Overnight, the population of Rome doubles. The Sabines, with their discipline, their wealth, and their severe gods, take possession of the Capitoline Hill, the one they conquered by betrayal, and of the Quirinal Hill. The original Romans, the band of outlaws of Romulus, keep the Palatine. The intermediate valley, the scene of the chase and massacre, becomes the meeting point, the comitium, the place where two peoples must learn to be one. They call themselves Quirites, a new name for a new nation. But the most radical change, the most dangerous political experiment, occurs at the top of the pyramid, Romulus. The man who killed his own brother Remus because he could not stand anyone jumping his wall. The man who does not share power even with his shadow, now must share the throne. A diarchy is established. Two kings. One single city is an aberration. In nature, Busquet, a body with two heads is a monster destined to die young. In politics, it is a recipe for civil war. But for 5 years, the impossible happens. The monster survives. Romulus and Tatius govern together. Their thrones are placed side by side. They make joint decisions. The Senate, that council of elders founded by Romulus with 100 men, expands to 200 to accommodate the Sabine nobles. The army is reorganized, combining the reckless ferocity of the Romans with the solid Sabine infantry. Rome flourishes. It is no longer the camp of bandits. Now it is an emerging regional power. The union of Roman aggressiveness and Sabine stability creates an alloy harder than iron. They conquer the Cameronenses. They subdue rebels. The city grows, fattens, and enriches itself. It seems the happy ending of a fairy tale. The enemies become brothers. Peace reigns. But do not be deceived. Look closely at Romulus. Look at how he clenches his jaw every time Tatius speaks in the Senate and receives applause. Look at how his eyes darken when the decisions of Tatius contradict his own. Romulus is an alpha predator. He has tolerated another male in his territory out of necessity, out of survival. But the instinct does not erase with peace treaties. The patience of a man like Romulus has a limit, and that limit is stretching every day more. And Titus Tatius, for his part, commits the classic error of those who feel untouchable. He becomes arrogant. He forgets that he is in a city founded on fratricide. He forgets that his co-king is a man capable of anything. The crisis erupts not in Rome, but in the neighboring city of Lavinium. It is a dirty, trivial incident unworthy of kings, but it is the spark that lights the fuse. Some blood relatives of Titus Tatius, Sabine men who believe themselves above the law, assault some ambassadors from Lavinium, rob them, beat them, and in the chaos kill them. It is an international crime. Lavinium demands justice. They demand that the murderers be handed over to be executed. The law is clear. Honor demands it. Romulus, seeing the political and moral opportunity, agrees, hand over the guilty, he says. The justice of Rome does not protect murderers, whoever they may be. But Tatius hesitates. Blood pulls more than justice. He protects his relatives, blocks the extradition. He refuses to hand over his own to the sword of Lavinium. They are my blood, he argues. I will not sacrifice them. It is a fatal error. By protecting criminals, Tatius becomes an accomplice, breaks the neutrality of the crown, and, the most dangerous thing, humiliates Romulus, making him look weak before the neighbors, incapable of imposing the law in his own city. The tension on the dual throne becomes unbearable. The looks in the Senate are sharpened knives. Romulus distances himself. He lets Tatius handle the disaster alone. If you want to protect them, you deal with the consequences. Seems to say his silence, and the consequences arrive quickly. Titus Tatius decides to go to Lavinium in person to offer a solemn sacrifice, an offering to the gods to calm the divine and diplomatic anger. He believes that his status as king will protect him. He believes that gold and incense can wash away the blood of the dead ambassadors. He travels with his guard, with his priests. He enters the offended city with his head held high. He heads to the altar. But in Lavinium, they do not want incense. They want blood for blood. While Tatius bends over the altar with the ceremonial knife in his hand to sacrifice the beast, the crowd closes around him. They are not enemy soldiers in a battle. It is a lynching mob. There are shouts of justice and death to the tyrant. The knives that come out from the folds of the tunics are not ceremonial. They are butcher knives. Tatius turns surprised. He looks for his guard, but it is late. The first blow enters his side, the second in the chest. King of Rome, the man who survived the swamp war, the man who united two peoples, is stabbed to death like a stray dog in a foreign city, paying for the crimes of his relatives. The news reaches Rome like a gale. Titus Tatius has died. The city holds its breath. The Sabines reach for their swords, fearing a purge. The Romans look at Romulus, waiting for a declaration of war against Lavinium for the regicide. But Romulus does not declare war. Romulus does not even seem surprised. He receives the body of his colleague. He orders a magnificent funeral, full of pomp and honors. He cries the just tears of a brother on the throne. But there is a detail that freezes the blood of the most astute observers. Romulus does not pursue the assassins from Lavinium. He accepts their excuses. He says that the death of Tatius was lamentably divine justice for having protected criminals. He closes the case and sits back on the throne. Only the two-headed monster has died. Rome once again has a single master. And now, without the break of Sabine prudence, without anyone to challenge his power, Romulus is free. And a free Romulus is the most dangerous thing the ancient world has ever seen. With Titus Tatius under the ground, the mask of diplomacy falls to the ground and breaks into 1,000 pieces. Romulus no longer needs to smile. He no longer needs to consult. He no longer needs to share. Rome enters a new phase. If the first years were of desperate survival and the middle years were of political compromise, this final stage is of pure and hard autocracy. Romulus becomes the archetype of the successful tyrant. His military victories are crushing. Fidenae, a powerful Etruscan city, falls before his legions. Veii, the great rival of the north, is humiliated and forced to cede enormous territories. Romulus returns to Rome not only as a king, but as a demigod of war. He celebrates triumphs, parades with chariots loaded with booty and chained prisoners. The people, the plebs, adore him. For the common citizen, for the farmer and the soldier, Romulus is the father who gives them lands and glory. But in the shadows of the Senate porticos, the air becomes poisonous. The patres, the senators, the heads of the noblest families, both Roman and Sabine, look at their king with a hatred that grows day by day. Romulus has stopped listening to them. He no longer convenes the council to ask for opinion, only to give orders. He distributes the conquered lands among his soldiers without consulting the aristocracy. He returns hostages by personal whim. He behaves as if Rome were his private property and the senators mere decorative furniture. And to make sure that no one dares to raise their voice, Romulus creates his own Praetorian Guards centuries before the concept exists. He calls them the Celeres, the Swift. They are 300 men, 300 young men selected for their strength, their cruelty, and above all, their blind fanaticism toward Romulus. They accompany him everywhere. They are in the forum. They are in the banquets. They are in the streets. They walk surrounding the king with their hands always close to the hilts of their swords, looking at the senators with defiant eyes. They are the king's hunting dogs. If Romulus points, they bite. If Romulus frowns, someone disappears. The message is clear. The Senate can debate, but Romulus has the steel. The tension in the city becomes unbearable. The old patricians gather in secret in their villas, whispering conspiracies by the light of oil lamps. They remember the past of Romulus. He killed his brother for jumping a wall. They murmur. He let Tatius die to reign alone. What will prevent us from killing one of us if we contradict him? Romulus has become untouchable. His arrogance has reached theological levels. He dresses in purple tunics. He wears red Etruscan-style shoes. He sits on a throne elevated far above the others. He no longer walks among men. He floats above them. He believes that his luck is eternal. He believes that the gods owe him favors. But arrogance is a magnet for misfortune. We are in the 37th year of the reign of Romulus. The king is 54 years old. He is a lion in the winter of his life, still strong, still lethal, but surrounded by hyenas waiting for the moment of weakness. The moment arrives on a hot day in July. Romulus convenes a great military assembly in the field of Mars, near the goat swamp. It is a review of the troops, a public census. The entire army is there. The senators are there standing in a compact and silent group, observing their king from a prudent distance. The people cheer. Romulus climbs onto his platform to speak. The sky is clear and blue. The sun shines strongly on the bronze armors. Nothing presages the disaster. But then, out of nowhere, the wind changes. The temperature drops sharply. The blue of the sky turns to a sickly gray and then to absolute black. It is not a normal storm. It is a sudden and violent atmospheric cataclysm. Deafening thunder shakes the earth under the feet of the legions. A thick dust rises, blinding the men, drowning the screams. The rain begins to fall, not like water, but like a biblical deluge, a solid curtain that prevents seeing the hand in front of the face. Panic takes hold of the crowd. The soldiers run seeking shelter. The plebs disperse screaming. Fearing the wrath of the Bung, the chaos is total. In the middle of the supernatural darkness, of the roar of the wind and of the lightning that split the sky, the figure of Romulus on his throne blurs. The assembly dissolves into an anarchy of mud and fear. For 1 hour, the world seems to end, and then, as quickly as it came, the storm ceases, the wind calms, the clouds open, the sun comes out timid again, illuminating the soaked swamp. The Romans, trembling, come out of their hiding places. The soldiers return to form ranks seeking their commander. The people turn their gaze toward the royal platform, expecting to see their leader wet but firm, laughing at the storm. The throne is there. The purple tunic is there, thrown on the ground, but the king is not. Romulus has disappeared from the face of the earth. The emptiness in the throne weighs more than the king himself. The silence in the field of Mars is broken first with confused murmurs, then with shouted questions, and finally with a roar of suspicion that makes the ground tremble more than the thunders. The Roman soldiers, those scarred veterans who adored Romulus as a father, slowly turn toward the only group of people who do not seem surprised, but relieved: the senators. The atmosphere changes from mystical astonishment to homicidal fury in a matter of seconds. "Where is he?" shouts a centurion with his hand on the sword. "What have you done with him?" The senators, the patras, retreat pale as wax. They realize too late that their problem has just begun. Romulus has disappeared. Yes, but the army is still there, and the army is looking for culprits. The storm gave them the perfect cover for the crime. The darkness hid the daggers, but the sunlight threatens to reveal the slaughter. The most grotesque and visceral rumor in the history of Rome begins to circulate. It is whispered that there was no divine ascension. It is whispered that under the mantle of darkness and the roar of the thunders, the senators pounced on the king like a pack of jackals. It is said that they tore him apart right there on the platform, that they cut his body into small pieces, and that each senator hid a piece of bloody flesh under the folds of their togas to remove the corpse from the place without being seen. It is a horrifying image. The idea that the fathers of the fatherland are literally regicidal butchers. The crowd advances. The spears lower. The senators are surrounded. The plebs wants blood for blood. Rome is on the brink of self-destruction minutes after losing its founder. If the soldiers attack, no noble will remain alive, and the city will fall into tribal anarchy. It is a checkmate moment. The senators need a miracle, or rather they need a lie so big, so beautiful, and so perfect that the truth has no space to exist. From among the rows of the terrified patricians, a man emerges. Julius Proculus is a respected man, known for his honesty, which makes him the perfect actor for the final farce. He walks toward the front, toward the enraged crowd, without fear. He raises his hands not to defend himself, but to ask for silence. "Romans," he cries Proculus with his voice broken by a masterfully feigned emotion. "Lower your weapons. Do not cry for a mortal man, because today you have lost a king, but you have gained a gun." Silence falls again. Curiosity breaks the violence. Proculus tells his story. He swears by his life and by the honor of his family that while traveling on the road back to the city at dawn, the sky opened. He swears that Romulus descended from the heavens, larger than life, shining with a divine light armor. He told me, "Go and announce to the Romans that it is the will of heaven that my Rome become the capital of the world." Relates Proculus, looking into the eyes of the fiercest soldiers, that they practice the art of war, and that they and their posterity know that no human power can resist Roman arms. And then the final phrase, the master stroke that closes a circle. And having said this, he ascended again to the heavens. Now he is Quirinus, a god for us. It is brilliant. It is absolutely genius. If the senators said he died of a heart attack, no one would believe them. But by saying he became a god, they give people something they desperately want. The soldiers do not want to believe that their hero was stabbed like a pig by some envious old men. They want to believe that their leader was divine, that they are the chosen ones, that their city is eternal. The lie swallows the truth in one bite. The anger of the soldiers evaporates. replaced by religious awe. They fall to their knees not before the senators, but before the empty sky. They begin to pray to Quirinus, the god who 5 minutes ago was a torn corpse under dirty togas. The senators breathe relieved. They wipe the cold sweat from their foreheads. They have survived. The political crisis has transformed into a religious festival. The perfect murder has been consummated. And not only will there be no punishment, but there will be temples. Romulus has left the building. Quirinus has entered the legend. But while the smoke of incense rises toward the clouds, a cold truth remains on earth. Rome has learned its darkest lesson. Power is not asked for. It is taken, and if necessary, it is killed for it, and a god is invented to cover the trail. The storm has passed. The sky over Rome returns to an innocent blue, as if the universe conspired to hide the sin in the field of Mars. The rain has washed away the blood if there was any, and the mud hardens again under the sun. Romulus is gone. The man who was suckled by a she-wolf, the man who traced the sacred furrow and killed his brother for crossing it, no longer walks among mortals. His body will never appear. There will be no tomb for Romulus, only a temple for Quirinus. It is the supreme irony of his life. Romulus lived by the sword and died, most probably by the daggers of his own counselors. He built a city by inviting criminals and outcasts and ended up being devoured by the elite that he himself created. He stole to secure the future of his people, and that fusion with the Sabines created the same political class that finally decided that he was dispensable. Rome is left alone. For 1 year, the senators will try to govern by turns a failed experiment called the interregnum. But the people do not want committees. The people want a king. And eventually the Romans and the Sabines, now indissolubly united by blood and secrets, will choose Numa Pompilius, a peaceful Sabine, to bring order to the chaos. Numa will bring laws. He will bring religion. He will bring peace. But do not be mistaken. The spirit of the city is not that of Numa. The DNA of Rome is that of Romulus. Look, the foundations of this city are not made of stone and lime. They are made of a much darker mass. They are made of the fratricide of Remus. They are made of the violent kidnapping of the Sabines. They are made of the betrayal of Tarpeia crushed by shields, and now they are sealed with the regicide of its founder, covered by the most audacious lie ever told. Any other city would have collapsed under the weight of so much guilt. But Rome is not any city. Rome is a predator that has learned to dress itself in civilization. It has learned that if the violence is big enough, it is called conquest. If the lie is sacred enough, it is called religion. The Sabine women, now respected Roman matrons, will cradle their grandchildren and tell them the story of how their grandfathers stopped a war. They will not tell them the terror of the kidnapping. They will tell them the glory of the Union. History is rewritten while it happens. The sun sets over the 7 hills, in the place where Romulus disappeared. The air seems to vibrate with ecstatic energy. The man has died, the king has fallen, but the idea has survived. The machinery of conquest that he set in motion will not stop for 1,000 years. Romulus no longer needs a body. Now he is the air that the legions breathe. He is the fear in the eyes of the enemies. He is the infinite ambition that will devour the map of the known world. The first wolf has left the pack, but the hunt has only just begun.